Hi everyone, I'm Alasdair.
I'm Sam, still. You have come to the right place, because what are we doing today?
Oh yes, we're doing a recap of the entire 13th Doctor era, and this always comes with a disclaimer, which is that we're very passionate people. We're going to do our very best for you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Our research skills are adequate, but we are not a 3-hour video essay type bunch. We're not these archaeologists who dredge up the archives. They put up their sources, their clips, their interviews, their snippets. Listen, we'll do our best.
You are really downplaying. You know what? And I'm going to follow that with, we know every single piece of information there is to know about anything Doctor Who.
Okay.
Everything we say is completely true.
You know what?
And we are.
We're qualified.
We're qualified. Do you know what? I
we're
think
qualified.
This far into our Doctor Who podcast, having just passed our year anniversary, I do think we're qualified for this.
So qualified.
I have faith in this, and I'm actually very, very excited to dive in and have a chat about the 13th Doctor's era. So as we've said in previous episodes, we know a lot of people who loved Doctor Who when the revival came out, or loved it at certain points in New Who and just kind of fell off, and they feel like they can't really jump in fully into the 60th anniversary celebrations because they haven't watched it in a while, and that's completely fine. So we just want this to be a casual, fun little chat where we bring you up to speed on things you may have missed leading up to the 60th specials.
Yes, we're going to try and whiz you through 3 series of Doctor Who that you might have missed, series 11, 12, and 13, right up to The Power of the Doctor, which was the last special we saw on TV just over a year ago. I think it was a year yesterday.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it was our second ever episode of Wholala was recapping The Power of the Doctor.
We were so excited. Bless us. We were still sat under a blanket.
Yeah, we were.
In your bedroom.
In my bedroom. We watched it with my partner and then very quickly said, okay, goodbye, we have to record a podcast about this now.
No notes.
No notes. And
just
you know
vibes.
What a fun little ep it was, but it was full of vibes.
What a fun little ep it was. It was. So let's talk about the casting of the 13th Doctor and the end of the Stephen Moffat era.
Yes.
In January 2016, Stephen Moffat announced that he would leave the show after the 10th series. He was set to be replaced by new showrunner Chris Chibnall, who had previously done Torchwood and Broadchurch. I think Broadchurch was what he was best known for.
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi confirmed a year later that the 10th series would be his last as well. Following this news, several media reports and bookmakers had speculated who would replace Capaldi as the 13th Doctor. Bookmakers' favourites included Ben Whishaw, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Chris Marshall, and Tilda Swinton. This has reminded me so strongly how everyone thought it was going to be Chris Marshall. I don't know where that rumour began, or if he was indeed in the running, but I heard so strongly, like, it's Chris Marshall. It's Chris Marshall.
I think I heard Andrew Scott as well at the time. I think people thought it was going to be Andrew Scott. Like, there were so many names. I still stand by the fact that I would love to see a Doctor Who series led by Phoebe Waller-Bridge as well. I think that'd be amazing.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
If only. Well, on the 16th of July 2017, a teaser for the upcoming era announced that Jodie Whittaker would in fact be taking on the role as the 13th Doctor, and with that comes the first official female Doctor. Smashing through the glass ceiling, Whittaker brought a fresh new take to the role, bringing in a larger TARDIS fam and exploring stories and places the show had never been before. Her era brought on a plethora of new characters and are going to bring back several familiar faces, from Captain Jack Harkness to the mysterious Sea Devils.
Jodie's warm and optimistic performance touched people around the world, and her dedication to the role both on and off screen was a testament to her love for the character, from voicing the Doctor in audio dramas and video games to making a touching message from the Doctor during the COVID lockdowns.
In July 2021, it was announced that Jodie Whittaker and showrunner Chris Chibnall would both be leaving the series, culminating in a centenary special for the BBC, which saw the return of classic monsters and companions. Chris Chibnall said, "Jodie and I made a 3-series and out pact with each other at the start of this once-in-a-lifetime blast, so now that our shift is done, we're handing back the TARDIS keys."
It must be nice, making a pact
to
make Doctor Who together. When are we making our 3-series and out pact?
Is it you announcing Wholala is finishing in like 9 episodes?
Good news. No, I meant like when we get no no, I mean, like, what if we got handed the keys?
I know. It does make you wonder, like, whether each showrunner and Doctor starts it with like a pact as to how long they're going to do it, or if they kind of go, because I feel like David Tennant didn't know when he was finished. I think he just did it till he wanted to stop.
I think there's lots of dinners and indications given and bottles of wine shared and,
Probably.
Come on, David, give us one more.
Give us another.
Do you remember watching... Well, actually, do you remember the announcement? Because it was on TV. I don't know exactly when, but there was this whole ident that we knew was going to be playing at a certain time that would reveal the new Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you?
So I remember this so well. I was on holiday in Cornwall with my family. We'd had an Airbnb, and I remember so well that it was, I think probably at 3 p.m. or something. I think it was mid-afternoon that they had said this little 30-second, 1-minute item was going to be on where they would announce the new Doctor. And it's so funny. And to be honest, I think that this already is doing a little bit of a disservice to Jodie in that for Peter Capaldi, I mean, they announce every Doctor differently. Peter Capaldi got a whole TV show special, and she had a very short announcement teaser where she didn't even say anything. But I remember knowing that it was on and sitting at the TV waiting and watching it and trying to work out. There's a close-up of her hand with the TARDIS key before you see her face. And I remember this was the one where there was a lot of debate as to if it was going to be a male Doctor or a female Doctor. And I remember trying to work out from the hand. I was like, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? And then she pulled back the hood, and I had actually never seen Broadchurch or anything, so I had no clue who she was. And I was like, it's her.
That's it.
But Vivid. And I remember thinking that she was in a grey hoodie, and it was very grungy. And I remember two things. I remember seeing that and being like, oh, that's a really boring costume, thinking that'd be our costume. But then the second thing, and I don't know if you remember this, is she walks towards the TARDIS, but it's the 2005 infamous PNG that they'd copied.
It's always that PNG. Oh my god, TARDIS.png. It's always the one they use.
It really is. But yeah, what about you? Where were you?
Yeah, I was at home. I was fearful it would be Chris Marshall, because I think of him so strongly as being from the BT ads. And also My Family as one of the idiot sons. So I was
yes.
I just didn't see it. And then I was naive in thinking it would be Idris Elba, because I feel around this time Idris Elba was just named, and still is, as the casting choice for everything. It's who should the next Bond be? Idris Elba. And I don't know what we based that on, because Idris Elba is a fine actor.
Yeah.
But I don't see him in half these roles that he gets named for. Anyway, I was like, it's going to be Idris Elba. It obviously wasn't Idris Elba. I was surprised and pleased that they made the choice to cast a female Doctor. I feel like I'd heard so many past showrunners and even past companions say no, the Doctor should always be a man, that I was kind of sure they would never do it.
Even past Doctors, I remember hearing, not to out him again, I mean, it's public said it, Peter Davison had said something like, the Doctor should always be a man, because otherwise you're taking away a role model from young boys or something like that.
Yeah, that was it.
I was like, oh, that's really gross.
I think it's something he's since retracted and clarified.
Yes, no, I'm sure, yes. So, as with all of these recap episodes, there is a lot to talk through, and we're going to dive into Series 11 in a moment, but we reached out to you on our Twitter and Instagram to let us know what you guys thought of the 13th Doctor's era, and you had quite a lot of interesting things to say.
Loads of interesting things to say. I love doing this. I love getting a proper brevity of opinions, and it not just being me and Sam as well, which is nice. 13's infectious optimism and humility. I learned to love it only after the fact. The first episode of the Flux series and Power of the Doctor was amazing. Once she got her new outfit from the charity shop, yes, thrifty queen, OMG sustainable. Resolution is so underrated. Demons of Punjab is fierce. I gagged. That pregnant man who called his baby avocado pear.
Oh,
now,
gosh.
This could have been the one with the pating.
It was. I remember, because I was at the point in my life where I didn't commit to watching this entire era while it was on. I dipped in and out. But no, I do remember that was the episode with the pating.
Sure. Damla, our fave from the Come Along Pond podcast, that Phasmin kiss should have happened, and I will die on that hill.
I don't disagree. We also had a lot of lovely messages on our Twitter. Ethan said, I have a lot of fond memories for this era, but a big highlight was Jodie's lockdown video in her costume, reassuring everyone to stay strong. I still watch it for reassurance sometimes. When the world went mad, it was comforting to feel like the Doctor was there for us. I think that's really important. I'm sure that any Doctor in the role would have done it, but I just think the way that she recorded that video, so in character, so truthfully as the Doctor. Matthew said, I think there was some nice experimentation, especially with Series 11, and I love how most of the classic villains were treated. 13 is an enjoyable Doctor, and Whittaker is a great ambassador for the show. It has a fair few problems, but still a lot of good episodes. Owen has sent us the gif of Gaga going, spectacular, show-stopping, totally unique, never the same.
Brilliant.
Owen also said, Jodie Whittaker as 13 and Mandip Gill as Yaz were the absolute standouts of this wonderful era, and I've loved watching them both on my TV. I would have loved to see them continue if Chibnall and Whittaker had decided to do another series.
Ah,
I think this is one of the big things that I feel with it, and it's nice to hear that so many other people think it too, is that Jodie Whittaker, I mean, all of the collective cast, but Jodie Whittaker particularly was such an incredible ambassador for the show, and I really, truly do believe that the 13th Doctor's Doctor connected with people in a way that other Doctors hadn't, and I see so many people so often tell me that the 13th Doctor is their favourite Doctor, and rightfully so. I think that she really, really, truly is a unique portrayal of the Doctor, and opens doors for so many people to connect with the show in the way they might have connected before.
I listened to John Bishop's podcast not long after Power of the Doctor aired, where he had Jodie Whittaker on his show, and she's so funny, by the way, to listen to in conversation, because she's so sweary as well.
Yeah.
Like, you realise how much she is like dialed down to be the 13th Doctor, which is so funny. There was also that bit on Graham Norton. She said she drinks like half a bottle of wine every night. Like,
I love that for her.
Yes. And she said, like, yeah, someone told me it's a lot.
I love that
No,
for
Queen,
her. No.
But he said about her, like, the role of someone playing the Doctor, he observed, is also so much the person who has to set the tone for everyone on set. Like, when you come on in the morning, if everyone's a bit kind of like sluggish, it's not a great shoot, the weather's not good, people are feeling a bit down, you're behind schedule, whatever, like, you have to come in as the lead actor and you really set the tone for like what the mood is on set that day. And he said, like, she just stepped into that. She just knew everyone by name. She came on, she cheered everything up. She like, you know, took time to get to know everyone. That just doesn't surprise me at all. And I think we've said this before, but Doctor Who needs an ambassador like that, someone to play the Doctor who is fundamentally a very good person as well. And I really think she is that.
Yeah, I really, really agree. Right, Alasdair, we cannot hold the viewers back anymore. Please, go on. Give me a recap of Series 11.
No more teasing. You can have Series 11. Okay, so here's my best go. This is a bit from memory, so forgive me. So, Episode 1, we meet the new Doctor, Graham O'Brien, Grace O'Brien, Ryan Sinclair, who is Grace's grandson, Yasmin Khan, and the evil, tooth-covered Sim Shah, who they call Tim Shaw, as a really, really funny joke. Ryan Sinclair is a warehouse packer with dyspraxia who calls the police and gets help from PC Yasmin Khan, who is his old school friend, when he discovers a blue alien pod in the woods. Ryan's grandmother Grace and her husband Graham find themselves tangled up in the fun, but while the Doctor is saving the day, Grace does actually die in that first episode, which is quite a shocker. And we also get the debut of the 13th Doctor's homemade sonic screwdriver, which she makes out of partly out of spoons and kind of scavenged
Sheffield
alien
Steel.
tech. Sheffield Steel, very cool scene. The 13th Doctor accidentally zaps them all into space. They get picked up. They find themselves in some intergalactic space race where everyone is racing towards something called the Ghost Monument, which it turns out is indeed the 13th Doctor's TARDIS, which is very slowly phasing in and out, materializing over hundreds and thousands of years. So we get this cool new crystal interior, and in this episode we get our first clue about something ominous called the Timeless Child. In this next episode, we then have a journey to the past, and we meet Rosa Parks, where Graham becomes part of history. Graham becomes a white man sitting on the bus who refuses to stand up, allowing history to progress as it should, and for Rosa Parks to become a historical icon. In the next episode, we have this one with spiders, where we meet the Khan family, and the gang decide to carry on travelling with the Doctor and they can't quite give it up. Then we have an adventure in space on a spaceship hospital with an alien called the Pating that is very hard to kill and likes to eat stuff, and they jettison it into space and make it eat a bomb or something like that. Then we go into an emotional love story set on the Pakistan-India border during the 1947 partition, which is a lovely, gorgeous episode where, once again, the alien really isn't all that evil. It's just aliens who want to witness death. They're not creating death. In fact, they're quite nice. They accompany people who would have otherwise died alone. Then we have a very controversial episode where a man working for essentially Amazon, but it's kablam, an AI-run company with only 10% of its workers being humans. He tries to blow it up. He tries to explode it. And the wonderful message at the end of this from the Doctor is that capitalism is not the problem. It is people who exploit capitalism. And all the humans get jobs again, in a weird setback for universal basic income. So that's a shame. The next episode, we have aliens and 17th century witch trials causing trouble for the Doctor, and sexism for the first time, which is an interesting one. Then we have another mixed review episode that I really like, which is a very charming story where the gang fall into a parallel universe which manifests itself as a frog in Norway, a lonely universe that cannot be part of ours, that has to disappear. And then we get a very rushed and confused finale with the return of Tim Shaw in space. And I found this one very hard to summarize, so I just sort of didn't. And then I'll finish with the New Year's special, which is where a single Dalek appears in the form of the Reconnaissance Dalek. It's kind of an ancient, buried Dalek that was killed in ancient times and split up by ancient human tribes and carried into different corners of the world, but it somehow is still alive and has come back, made its own casing via mind control, and tries to take over GCHQ, but the Doctor tricks it and basically chucks it into a supernova out the TARDIS doors. And in this one, UNIT is revealed to be disbanded, which is a odd twist that doesn't really go anywhere. And that's it. That's series 11. How was that?
I'm going to put my mic down so I can clap, because that was a very, very well. That was actually, do you know what? That was, we were talking about this a bit before we started recording the podcast. The reason I think, in particular, series 11 out of all of this era is so hard to recap is because there is no underlying arc. There's no underlying storyline. Like, you can kind of, with Russell and Moffat episodes, like, talk about a whole series in like a smaller summary than that. Like, you've gone through episode by episode because you had to, because there really isn't an underlying arc to the series. It's just kind of lots of different adventures happening, which is a really interesting sort of change from previous episodes and series. But you did a very, very good recap there, Alasdair. Well done.
Thank you.
What I really, really like about it, Start on a High for me, is how it sort of feels reminiscent to Tom Baker's first series, where I don't know if you've seen, I think it's series 14, I believe, of Doctor Who. It's Tom Baker's first. I might be misquoting that, but it's
You're
Tom
right,
Baker's.
yeah, no.
Oh, there we go. Basically, he loses the TARDIS within like the first story is set on Earth. It's a grounded Earth unit story, and then he loses the TARDIS in episode 2, like in story 2, which I believe is the Ark in Space. And then the entire rest of the series is him, Sarah Jane, and Harry trying to get back to the TARDIS, but having very much like adventure of the week. Each of these adventures is unconnected beyond the fact that they're trying to get to the TARDIS. And there's a Sontaran episode, and there's a Cyberman episode, and there's a Dalek episode, and there's lots of different episodes like this. And the beginning of series 11 really reminded me of that, and I liked that it's the Doctor and a new team trying to find the TARDIS quite literally in episode 2, but then also find their footing as a team, where it's not really until episode 4 or 5 that they all decide they want to be a part of the TARDIS team. I think it's like episode 5 where they all go, no, actually, we want to stay and have these adventures. And I quite like that dynamic of not having like the one companion that by the end of episode 1 has decided they want to stay with the Doctor, you know. And I thought that was a really interesting way to kick this series off.
I think the thing that really stood out to me is how cinematic the whole thing felt. I think this is such an underrated point. People now look at like trailers for the 60th anniversary stuff and they go like, oh wow, like Doctor Who's got money. And I'm like, this has been the way for a while. Like, if there's one thing you cannot fault about the Chibnall era, it looks gorgeous.
It
like,
really
the VFX,
does.
The camera work, like everything about it's never looked that good.
I remember trying, again, we've said this on the podcast before, I remember trying to convince my boyfriend that Doctor Who was good, and I'd shown him clips of like Russell's era, and he was like, this looks like shit, because it's like, 2005 standard definition TV. But we watched the first, I think, 5 episodes together. Like, I don't even think you know this. Me and Nick watched episodes 1 through 5 together, and he watched all of like the episode the whole way through. And I remember in episode 1 of this series, he sat down, he was like, oh, this looks amazing. Like, it was the wide shots over Sheffield with trying to teach him the bike, and he was just like, this looks like cinema, like this looks incredible. And it really does.
It's never looked that good. It's really never looked that good. The VFX is stunning as well. Like, every shot I'm thinking of is good. The Ghost Monument shot where she is walking towards the TARDIS
with the Sonic,
her arm stretched out, and she's walking towards the TARDIS and it's phasing in. It looks so gorgeous and cinematic. I know they filmed all over the place, which is really one of my highs actually for the whole Chibnall era, is they filmed absolutely all over the shop. They filmed in Tenerife, Wales, obviously, Bulgaria, South Africa, and they set Doctor Who in so many locations on Earth, which I really felt like made the whole universe feel bigger. Was they set episodes in Alabama, Pakistan, Norway, Peru, Hong Kong, Madagascar, and sometimes you're not there for long. But when you are, I think they did it really well. You know, the power of the Doctor, not to jump too far ahead, but there is a whole scene that happens in a palace in Russia, and none of that is on location. It is a set they've built. Doctor Who has never ever looked as good as it does in the Chibnall era.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that one of my big highlights for this entire era, not just Series 11, is how far-flung they go. Like, I remember with, like, say, talking about Russell's era, it would be a real big deal. Like, they're like, we're going on location. Like, when they went to the fires of Pompeii and they filmed in Spain, or
we're going to
the
Spain.
Dead, they were in the desert, they were like, yeah, we're going to Spain. They were like, we are doing one on location. We're not in a quarry today, baby. And I think that's a really good point you made, that, like, there are episodes like the Demons of Punjab where they are there for the whole episode, and that's very much the point. But then, like you said, there are other areas where they just sort of visit places, and I think that Spyfall, which again we'll talk about in a bit, was really good for like visiting locations but not necessarily staying there the whole time. And it really does just give Doctor Who, I think, gives an opportunity to tell stories that hadn't normally been told, but it also does just grow the scope and scale of the show. And it really does show you that, like, you know, this being travels far and wide, not just in and around Wales. So yeah, I think that was such a huge point for this era too.
Yeah. I want to say something now about the character, if I may, of the 13th Doctor at this point. So this is our first introduction to the character of the 13th Doctor, and I think something worth saying, and this is why I almost like never want to wade in on these conversations, is because they turn so ugly so quick, and there is so much unfair sexism leveled at, I think, not just Jodie Whittaker and her performance, but women and female characters in sci-fi. Yeah. So another example for me, okay, maybe it's a character you don't like, and that's fine, but Rey in Star Wars, okay? I have no gripes with Rey. Whatever, sure, maybe
Mark Hamill does.
The sexist comments that came out, I mean, when she was cast, were insane. I mean, like, instantly jokes about crashing the TARDIS, oh, she's going to go on maternity leave now, and everything else that was said. And it reminds me of how Rey was so fiercely criticised. The character of Rey was, like, shredded apart because she was far too competent. She was far too skilled. It was like, well, she's unrealistically good. This is ridiculous. This is, you know, woke nonsense. But there's such an overlap there, I think, just with sexism and just holding whatever they'd done with the 13th Doctor being the first female Doctor, that I never want to kind of weigh in and make that criticism, because I feel like I'm just adding to such a nasty conversation. I just don't really feel like it's another voice that's needed, because I look around and there are 4-5 hour videos about the death of Doctor Who, she killed Doctor Who, he killed Doctor Who, and I think the amount of energy that is poured into some of these is far beyond a regular kind of, let's have a look at this episode and let's see what could have been better. But I find that so strange, like the strength of feeling there. There are, I think, perfectly legitimate criticisms you can make. I think there are aspects, I think especially in the first episode, where she doesn't feel totally relaxed into the role yet. And there were parts where it felt like still a bit of a rehearsal, and I almost wanted to see like the Doctor shine out. And my theory on this is that I think Jodie Whittaker's strongest roles that she's really, really great at doing are, someone described this as roles that come from a true place, you know, real people with very believable motivations, like very relatable things you can empathize with. And, you know, you might have seen, like, she's in a trailer coming up, this show called Time, and the clips I've seen from that look amazing, and like really, really heavy drama. And she looks just like, in the like seconds of clips I've seen that, I'm like hooked. And I don't get that immediately with the 13th Doctor. I think it's very much one that she came into, and for me is stronger the more emotional they allow the 13th Doctor to be. And I worry that something they did was try not to, as for good reason, was try not to allow the 13th Doctor to be too emotional, to avoid criticism that they were like, okay, first female Doctor, oh, look at that, she's getting emotional about something. And that they needed to write this quite androgynous character.
Yeah. No, I think that one of my criticisms... I completely agree with everything you said. I think that I tend to not want to weigh in on conversations about any criticism I have for this era, and particularly the 13th Doctor, even though I'm very happy to give criticisms for all of the Doctors, because I agree that I think it can become such a nasty conversation. I think there are so many people that call themselves Doctor Who fans that I don't think should, because they... How many times have you seen online people go, Doctor Who ended with Matt Smith, Doctor Who ended with Peter Capaldi, like, they're not my Doctor. And I'm just like, grow up. Like, so many people adore this era, and rightfully so, and so many people, Jodie Whittaker will always be their favourite Doctor. And that doesn't mean, like you said, that there aren't criticisms that I would make, but it just can become such a gross conversation about misogyny and, like, the woke BBC and blah, 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 blah. One thing that I think Jodie Whittaker's era suffered from, and I think Jodie Whittaker I felt sorry for, because I felt she suffered from writing choices that didn't really allow her to properly, at least at the beginning, I'll say, show her chops for who her Doctor is. One of these things that I remember being annoyed at the time, and this has nothing to do with Bradley Walsh or his performance in the show, is that they gave the Doctor such a big TARDIS team, and one of them was an older man who, at times, I feel like the Doctor was written to be very, like, jumpy around and can't really focus, and a little bit like ADHD and, like, grabbing here and doing this. And then Graham would quite often be like, right, Doc, okay, what are we doing? Like, and kind of, like, bring it down and be quite weighty. And I felt like that really undercut Jodie's ability to perform the Doctor how she might have otherwise done, because the role that was sometimes filled, or certainly filled, by, like, Peter Capaldi's Doctor, like the older like man in the TARDIS, then often went to Graham, and she was often being, like, reined in, it felt. And I know that certainly at the beginning, I don't think that's the case throughout the entire era, but I know that frustrated me at the beginning, and it also frustrated me a bit with the casting of Dan, when I would have loved to have just seen a series with Jodie and Yaz. And again, I John Bishop was great, and he was so funny, and I think we would have lost out so much not having had Dan in the show. Yeah. But I do think that they were sometimes afraid to give her opportunities they've given other Doctors, like to have very intimate Doctor-on companion scenes, especially when the sort of love story developed later as the series went, which kind of held Jodie back, I think.
I totally understand what you're saying. It reminds me of, like in the Spider-Man films with Tom Holland, they would just, like, insist on throwing in, like, Robert Downey Jr. just to, like, make sure people came to the cinema, and it was like, we would have come anyway.
Yeah,
beloved.
No, he always has that man.
There's always just some bloke there, and it's just like, it's like a steady hand, just in case he's bad. Let's just make sure that we still get the ticket sales. It's just that funny thing. I don't know. It's probably not in I don't know. Maybe it is intended in the same way. I agree with you. It's a funny thing. So I almost feel like anything they'd done would have had this disproportionate level of
scrutiny,
criticism for being too capable or too emotional or too overpowered or too bossy or too grumpy or whatever it might have been. If Jodie Whittaker had tried to do, the 12th Doctor's character, for example, you can imagine kind of the misery that would have come out of that. So it was sort of no win. I think what is wonderful about Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor is, like that comment we read, it's a very hopeful version of the Doctor.
Yes.
The cynicism of the 12th Doctor that I really didn't like so much is gone. Yes. This is a Doctor who, in their words, travels hopefully, which is a really lovely thing. And it's interesting as well. This Doctor, and I think this is maybe where Jodie benefits from, they say that she didn't get kind of briefed so much on what previous Doctors had done. So, like, where supposedly Russell T Davies has given Ncuti Gatwa this watch list of, like, here's all the episodes you need to know about, and here's this big info pack about the character you're playing, and, maybe have a look at some that you want to draw some inspiration from, which I think is how other Doctors have prepared. For example, I know that Matt Smith got some inspiration from Patrick Troughton for sure.
Yeah.
For the second Doctor. I think in a way that she maybe benefits, if she really did have less exposure to previous performances, is that her Doctor feels very youthful And it feels like a very fresh character. It doesn't feel weighed down by I'm many centuries old and I'm burdened by all the killing I've done in my life. And that hangover from the whole Time War arc through into even Capaldi's era really started to get irritating for me. So there's a bit in like the Peter Capaldi 12th Doctor episodes where Bill says to 12, like, have you killed people? Like, I don't have the luxury of outrage. I don't have the luxury of counting the people I've killed. And it's like, oh, boo hoo. And it bores me. And I like that this is a Doctor who is just like, let's go. Come on, fam. And, you know, it's quite, she's sweet as well. There's an innocence there, which I really like. And I think it's, for me, a little bit of a return to this, just someone passing through, just someone who's honestly just a bit silly and tries to do the right thing and somehow just keeps getting away with it, which I think really works for me. The Timeless Child arc, maybe like, we'll get to that, undermines that somewhat. But I think in terms of character, the Doctor does feel like someone who genuinely just keeps bumbling into situations and somehow getting away with it by the skin of their teeth, which is quite fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. So a big part about the Doctor's era was a brand new TARDIS team and a lot of new monsters. And I want to have a quick chat about the monsters in Series 11, but to do that, I would love to compare them to the monsters of Series 12. So Alasdair, do you have a little recap for me of Series 12 of Doctor Who?
Yes, I now have the confidence to push on with this, Sam, so thank you so much. So, episodes 1 and 2 are called Spyfall. There's this fun MI6 spy thriller adventure they go on a two-parter. Funny, this is MI6's first ever appearance on televised Who. Surprising to me.
That's interesting.
And we get a fabulous reveal of the Spy Master, which is this era's The Master. And the return of his TARDIS as well, which we haven't seen for a very long time. We also get the introduction of the Tissue Compression Eliminator, which is the Master's weapon that can shrink people down to kind of toy size. Very controversially, not a decision that I love, Gallifrey is revealed to have been destroyed again by the Master. And we now get the first appearance of the Timeless Child, which is quite exciting. After Spyfall, we move on to a not so great
Benny!
adventure.
Where's my Benny?
Benny! Yeah, we get a bit of a wobbly episode on an alien planet. It's a bit of a convoluted message about climate change. It doesn't quite hit. It's got some great comedy moments. Don't worry about it. Move on. This is one of the heavily criticized. Stories. Then we move back into the past, where an alien in 1903 is attempting to kidnap Nikola Tesla in order to make repairs to her ship. Now, this monster, you must know this, is played by Anjali Mahindra, who also played Rani in the Sarah Jane Adventures, who also, you will probably also know, is partner of Saskatchewan. She plays Queen of the Skithra, which is a very Arachnos-esque monster.
Everyone thought it was going to be like something to do with Arachnos, and it's more Scorpion, it's different.
It's a twin planet. Episode 5, we get a real juicy twist. We have the return of the Jadoon, plus Jack Harkness, plus the Chameleon Arch, because a character we meet called Ruth, who just appears to be an ordinary human, is actually revealed to be another incarnation of the Doctor. Ooh. And we get a mention of something called the Lone Cyberman, which is a warning from Jack. But yes, Ruth breaks the glass in a lighthouse and all of her memories are restored. So if you are a Series 3 of Doctor Who watcher, the Family of Blood episodes, you'll remember the Doctor could store all of his memories and consciousness inside a pocket watch. This is essentially what was done, but inside like the glass of a lighthouse. And at the very moment that all of Ruth's memories are being restored and she's becoming the Doctor, our Doctor, the 13th Doctor, is digging up a police box in the back garden. And what is this? And with that, Ruth slays her way onto the screen as the fugitive Doctor and says, "That's my TARDIS." Let's take it from the top. Basically, it's so good. I can't remember what she says.
It's so good.
Whatever she says, it's fantastic. Her performance, though very short-lived, is just fantastic. But neither of them recognize each other. Neither of them recognize each other as a past incarnation, and that's a mystery that hasn't quite been solved yet. Then we have another sort of ecological crisis type episode. We have an alien bacterium drawn to microplastics, which, as we all now know, are delightfully inside all of us. So infected people who get covered in this bacteria get covered in scales and explode. The Doctor creates an antidote. We have some hot gays in this episode as well. That's worth shouting out. Wholala is a queer Doctor Who podcast.
Heyo.
Heyo. The Doctor creates an antidote. All is fixed. In the next episode, the Doctor accidentally frees two immortal gods who thrive on causing chaos. We get a cool animated sequence at the start of this episode. This one was quite a big mental health story because one of them can create nightmares. So a lot of this episode is about the TARDIS team kind of revisiting their past traumas and their nightmares. Yaz reveals that she's previously had suicidal thoughts, and there was a police officer who talked her down from those feelings or helped her through those feelings. Graham reveals that he's had past cancer scares and is really worried about that. The 13th Doctor offers absolutely no comfort on that point. Another controversial moment there in this is her inability to say anything comforting to Graham. Funny, one of the immortals there mentions that other immortals include the Celestial Toymaker and others. So the Celestial Toymaker is named there. Very cool that immortals and eternals exist in the Doctor universe, and I'd love to see more of that.
I know, me too.
Very, very funky stuff. Next episode, which I watched just yesterday, the gang meet Mary Shelley on Lake Geneva in her villa in 1816. They are being haunted by a Cyberman named Ashad, who is seeking the missing Cyberium. The Cyberium is the collective knowledge of the Cybermen. It's like their battle AI supercomputer, but it looks like a blob of mercury. And after an initial victory, the Doctor is forced to release it and hand it over to Ashad, which dooms billions to die from the cyber empires
That's
of
exactly
the future.
what Jack warned her not to do.
It's just what he said not to do, but they couldn't change the past, Sam. They couldn't.
They couldn't.
Then the fam go Cyberman hunting in the far future, following right on from the last episode. They find human survivors who travel to a place called Ko Shamus, which is known as humanity's last hope. It's a portal to the other side of the universe where they can hide. The portal, however, is revealed to show the location to be the ruins of Gallifrey.
Dun dun
Gag.
dun.
And at that moment, the Master jumps through the portal and tells the Doctor she should be very afraid because everything is about to change forever.
And it really does.
And it does. So in the grand finale, which is maybe one of the most controversial storylines in Doctor Who history, the Doctor gets teleported to Gallifrey. The Master imprisons her in the Matrix, which is the kind of collective memories of all the Time Lords. The Master reveals that the Doctor was an orphaned female child from another dimension, founded and experimented on by a Shibogan woman, the native people who used to live on Gallifrey before the Time Lords, named Tecteun. And basically, in an accident, this child, who was the Doctor, who appears to us as a little girl who we've never seen before, doesn't look anything like any of the Doctors we've seen before, basically fell and, instead of dying, regenerated. And Tecteun experimented on this child over and over and over again. They seemed to be able to regenerate limitless times and eventually took that regeneration power and wrote it into the DNA of the Shibogans, creating the Time Lords. So every Time Lord is basically part the Doctor now, and they've capped their regenerations at 12, and they create this myth of the Time Lords that this is like a natural part of their biology, but it isn't. It's all made up. Like, it's all stolen from the Doctor and given to the other Time Lords. This knowledge sends the Master bananas because he cannot handle the idea that part of him is the Doctor, and part of their whole society was all founded on kind of the Doctor's mysterious powers. So really hates that. Anyway, long storyline on this one. He takes the Cybermen, brings them to Gallifrey, and converts dead Time Lords into Cybermen, calling them Cyber Masters. So they're now Cybermen with the power to regenerate, which is a massive, like, oh shit moment. Ruth, or the memory of Ruth, or the fugitive Doctor, who is also in the Matrix with the Doctor because it's in her mind, helps her escape by overloading the Matrix with her memories. They get out. The Doctor is planning to detonate something called the Death Particle to explode the Master and all the Cybermen. In the end, Koshamus turns up. I think I previously called Koshamus a place. Koshamus is a man. Koshamus turns up. And he's the granddad from Dairy Girls, if you're wondering what this man looks like. Wonderful, wonderful actor.
He's also in the series of Unforgotten that I worked on. He is a very, very lovely man.
I can imagine. And he takes her place, truly a lovely man, and dies instead. Back on Earth, everything seems fine, and right when we're about to wrap up the episode, the Jadoon appear and arrest the Doctor and take her to space jail. New Year's special, let's go, baby!
Let's go!
The Doctor is in jail with Captain Jack, John Barrowman, and they escape, they get back to Earth, they find the fam, but they find that Dalek clones are being bred on Earth, and they are inserting themselves into defense drones being made by the Tory government. The Doctor ultimately tricks another squad of Daleks into coming and killing them because they hate impure Daleks more than they hate humans. And then she traps that second gang of... Another controversial moment. The second gang of Daleks into a second TARDIS that she has, I guess, from the previous episode. She had the leftover
It was the
TARDIS.
one that she sent the fam to Earth in.
Sure. And traps, clever, traps all of the Daleks inside that. And then remembering that the TARDIS is a living, sentient thing, makes the TARDIS collapse in on itself, crushing everything inside it, and then sends it to the void for eternity. And at that point, Ryan and Graham decide to leave, unrelated to the dead TARDIS. How is that?
What a whistle stop tour. I'll give you, hold on, let me put my mic down for another clap. That was another whistle stop tour. This one had slightly more of an arc. I think we'll dive into that. I want to touch on, as I said before, the TARDIS team and the monsters. The TARDIS team for this, we've sort of lightly touched on Graham. I really do love Yaz in this series because we start to get little inklings, especially in the Dalek New Year special, of her feelings for the Doctor. I know that Yaz's relationship with the Doctor wasn't truly solidified until late, like that wasn't something they set out when they started writing this. But at the end of the Sideman storyline, the Doctor sends the TARDIS team back to Earth to like basically stay there forever, and they're meant to forget about her. And Yaz just becomes obsessive, and she ends up sort of living in this TARDIS, which they've made to look just like a sort of normal house. And Ryan and Graham, who are sort of getting on with their lives, which the Doctor told them to. The Doctor said, just get on with your lives and live normally, and they do. She is obsessive over finding the Doctor and making sure that she's safe. And I really, really do love that I think is the first inkling that we truly get to see how she feels about the Doctor.
Yes. We also get a really good moment, I noticed, from watching this episode. It's The Haunting of Villa, and I can't finish it. Villa Diodonti, Villa Dianotti, Villa It's Italian.
I'll tell you, but I'm gonna just let
it's
you do
Villa. The Haunting of Villa. We're gonna call for now, okay?
Diodati.
Diodati. The Haunting of Villa Diodati. And there is a bit in that where she's talking to Yaz's... No, it's not Mary Shelley she's speaking to. She's speaking to someone else who... Clock this tea. That's not the phrase. Hey, who let me pour this tea.
And who clock this tea? That was so unlike you.
Let me pour this scalding tea, hunty, is ex-girlfriend of Tom Holland. Anyway,
Really?
she's in it. I can't remember her name.
Zendonta.
So sorry. No. Anyway, yes, there's a part in that where she's like, she's not getting reciprocal love from the man in that episode, and Yaz is like, oh, I've got a confusing person too. I don't know how they feel either, and they have a nice gender neutral
It's a bit like that moment
conversation.
where Captain Jack looks over at Martha and is like, "You too, huh?"
You too, huh? Very that. Very, very that.
I do like that they brought Captain Jack back. We've sort of given this disclaimer before. I'm not going to say it every time we talk about Captain Jack, but we're sort of separating out from artists here. When talking about Captain Jack, we're not talking about JB. I do like they brought Captain Jack back. I do feel it was a bit of Chris Chibnall and the writing team trying to remedy complaints they had had from Series 11, which was that it had diverted the show too far from what had previously happened, that people weren't enjoying it as much. Now, Doctor Who should always be evolving and should always be ever changing. I think that is a great compliment for this entire era. However, pretty much, I would say, exclusively every single series of Doctor Who at some point in some way refers back to what's gone before, be it a returning monster or a returning character or references. And Series 11 felt so separate from what had gone on before. And like you said, there's a lot of benefits to that. But that a lot of people just didn't enjoy it as much. And I think in this series, they kind of did a 180 and was like, okay, well, you like Captain Jack, we're going to bring him back, and you like the Sidemen, we'll put them into an, the Jadoon, remember them, we'll also chuck them in. And it kind of felt a little bit like a melting pot, and that happens even more, I'd say, in Flux, which we'll talk about shortly. But yeah, I wanted to touch on the monsters as well, because Series 11 exclusively featured brand new monsters and aliens throughout the whole of the series, which is very exciting because I think it's fun.
Very ambitious.
Doctor Who. Very ambitious, very exciting. And like you said, there's lots of fun things. I love the Pating. I think that space parallel world frog is just so silly and so fun. And there's a lot of joy to come from that. But one thing that I have heard as a criticism for this series, which I do have to agree with, is that on the whole, especially if we're going to do a series entirely... On the whole, if you're going to do a series entirely focusing on new monsters, you have to make sure that they're memorable. And I just don't think that on the whole, Series 11 had... On the whole? I generally don't believe that Series 11 had a roster of memorable monsters. There's no, Weeping Angels in there. There's no Silence in there. There's no Zorgoloff in there. And I think that that's why they then started to lean a bit more in Series 12 into bringing back familiar faces. And I think, like you were saying before, the finale of Series 11 was quite a bit of like because they brought back Tim Shaw, who no one really knew or cared about, for a one-episode finale. Whereas I love when Doctor Who does this. They do a two-part finale, but the precursor to that, the quote-unquote third part of this three-parter, it's a completely separate story, but it ties into what the finale will be. So I think The Haunting of Via Della is just like, it's very much like a one and done story.
The Haunting of Ferrari.
Exactly. But with the sort of cliffhanger ending of the Cyberium going over to Ashad, that then very beautifully leads you into the finale and very successfully amps you up for an exciting finale. And I think a Cyberman finale is always going to be exciting, and they also love having Cyberman master stories ever since Capaldi's era. Actually, going further back, even going to the Five Doctors, they just love pairing the Cyberman and the Master.
Let me say this. Let me counter what you've just said a little bit about bringing back a lot of old companions monsters very suddenly to kind of go, oh crap, here's one you remember. A lot of them are done very well.
They are.
A pitfall here for some of the monsters, by the way, is I believe for some reason partway through this era, and I can't remember exactly where it happens, but the relationship ends between Doctor Who and Millennium Effects, who had historically since 2005 done all of the monster masks and prosthetics and done them to a very high spec, and there is a point at which I think you noticed they're a little bit off. That's one thing. However, that was my counter. I should have started with a different thought.
That does make me think. I always thought Tim Shaw, when I saw him on screen, he looked like he should be in the Power Rangers. I just always thought he looked like a Power Ranger.
I don't know that they got rid of him by that point, but he does look like a Power Ranger. He does look like an evil Power Ranger. A lot of the characters they did bring back I thought were great. I loved how they stepped up the Daleks. I so much preferred Chris Chibnall's Daleks to Stephen Moffat's Daleks, and dare I say, to Russell T Davies Daleks, apart from episode Dalek.
I'm not.
Well,
I'll agree with you on the Moffat. I'll agree with you on Moffat, but I won't go as far as Russell.
I really liked that they brought the Dalek out of the casing to make it scary. Was what I really, really liked. So the New Year special, the first one they did, when the Dalek is like an evil mind control squid, and itself is like a bit of a horror film-esque, like, oh god, where is it? It's on the wall. Oh no, it's not. It's over there. It's on my back. And it's making people speak for it. And it's like, even without the casing, a Dalek is dangerous is a great place to start, I think. The way it just kind of like leaps onto people's backs like a horrible octopus. I really, really, really liked that for me. And then with these Cybermen as well, Ashhead was so cool because in the episode the Haunting of Penny Pasta, they have a conversation where Mary Shelley is trying to get through to Ashhead, and it's like, I know you were loved once, and you were a human, you were a man, and you maybe had your own children once, and Ashhead, because he's got like a bit of emotion, he's a bit more switched on than a Cyberman. He can like tap into some emotion. Like he's quite like furious when he wants to be, and he's like, I did have a child, and he's almost like pretending to like, oh, you're winning me over, and he's like, and I slit his throat because he was weak, and blah, blah, blah. And then he like chucks Mary Shelley across the room, and they're like, oh my god. It's one of like it's a great episode. So there's a few monsters they brought back that I thought they did super well, and there's some interesting redesigns in there as well, like some more subtle than others. But yeah, I think there's a lot of great monsters in this era. Let me say that.
No, I agree. I agree. I think that Series 12 did it better, in my mind. Like, which I think should always be the way. I think that as a showrunner, as a doctor, you should always be building up and up and up and getting better and better and better. I think, personally, for me, Series 12 is better than Series 11. That's what I think.
That's a fair comment.
Yeah.
For you?
We should talk so briefly before we move on to Flux about the Timeless Child, because it is, I think, single-handedly the most controversial thing. Look, this is going to be a long episode. Viewers, have you got a snack? Feel free to pause. Go get a snack. Go get a drink. This is going to be a long one.
There's a big one. I think we've been holding off for just over a year, and I think Wholala is going to have to give a comment on the Timeless Child arc. The definitive comment.
I think it might be time for us to be open and honest with our listeners as where we stand on this very tumultuous issue.
I think it's time for us to speak our truth. I don't know that we can sit on this any longer. I don't know that we can remain silent.
Were we silent or were we silenced?
Let me say this, Sam. I liked the Timeless Child.
You did!
I liked it. I tweeted at the time. It'll be somewhere on the public record. Like the day of or the day after it came out. I mean, the furore was immediate. And I tweeted something like, this is genuinely one of the most interesting things Doctor Who has done in years. And I agree. Like, it is. Like, it's... Why not? Like, why is it? I feel like, oh, it fundamentally changes the character of the Doctor. Shut up. Like, boo-hoo. It's fun. I'm annoyed that they destroyed Gallifrey. That wound me up because I felt that we'd gone through so much to get to a point that Gallifrey was back. The fact it was destroyed off screen wound me up. The way they introduced the Timeless Child, I thought was so interesting because we had basically a series of flashbacks which were so... like, ooh, what is this? Happening in parallel with our adventure.
It was set in Ireland, right?
Yeah, like rural Ireland in like the 1900s, 18, whatever. And you're like, who is this guy at the middle of this? Like, who is this child? This like adopted child that gets found and then doesn't die. And it's interesting. We're like wondering like, when are we going to arrive in Ireland and continue this plot thread? Because it seems so detached from what's happening with the Cybermen and the future and everything else. And then it's revealed that all of these memories are in fact like distorted. They appear that way because they are being kind of obscured inside the Matrix, because the Matrix is where like the Time Lords put like all their knowledge, all their memories, all gets dumped there. And then the Matrix can create like predictions and prophecies and algorithms to kind of, you know, create this massive database off the back of that. But to hide the truth about the Doctor's origin inside there, they've kind of tweaked these memories, and that's what we're watching. And we have these really interesting parts when we realize that, we sort of flash between what first looks like it's some like, you know, old village police station, and then we realize it's actually kind of the high-tech Gallifrey hub for the division. And it like flashes in and out. It's like seconds, and I think it looks really cool. And like, I mean, that's obviously not the point, like the way it's introduced. People have an issue with the concept of the Timeless Child. I think it's so interesting because for me, it remains a mystery. We don't know still, like, who the child is. We don't know why the child was outside a wormhole. And the Doctor says this in episodes we'll get to, but I don't know if I was waiting for someone outside that wormhole. I don't know if I was meant to go through the wormhole. I don't know if I was... you know, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know if I'm from a different universe. You still don't know. It doesn't matter.
I think a lot of people... I like Timeless Child too. There is definitely stuff I don't like about it. I will say that. I think that you kind of like a full, wholeheartedly like, yep, 100% on board. There's definitely things I don't love about it. I think that a lot of people's issue with it is that one of the biggest things that people love about Doctor Who is just that it is Doctor Who. We are not meant to, as an audience, know too much about the Doctor. They always, in Stephen Moffat's era, he loved to go on about the Doctor's name. What's the Doctor's name? Their real name. And, you know, we never end up finding that out either. And I think a lot of people felt that we were finding too much out about the Doctor. I don't think it was even that they hated what they were doing with the Timeless Child. It's just that we were being told about it, and that we were finding out all of this, like, for sure stuff about the Doctor. I agree with you that it is great. There's so much we still don't know. My, I guess, gripe, I'll say, is that there is a lot we don't know, but I don't know whether that's because they wanted to lead into the enigmaticness of it and the questions, and you left wondering, and how much of it just wasn't a fully fleshed out story. I think that for a really good story to be told, we as the audience don't need to know everything, but the person telling the story has to know the entire story. And I might be, completely underselling Chris Chibnall's larger plan here. He might know every single thing that's going to happen. But he's even said since he left the show that he was like, I think whoever comes on next will probably undo a lot of the stuff I did. Almost like he doesn't have faith that his storyline could hold up. Because I think that it's really interesting as well that we had Doctors 1 through 8, and then all of a sudden, long before the Timeless Child and Chibnall's era, even with Russell T Davies, that all got messed up when the 10th Doctor was generated twice, and then there was the War Doctor, and now there's the Ruth Doctor, and then there's all this. But the one thing that I loved about it is that it played into the lore of classic Who in ways that other people have ignored it. So I don't know, how much do you know about the brain of Morbius? It's a Fourth Doctor story.
A little, and I know that within that we see some past faces on the screen of the Doctor that we don't recognise.
Yeah, so Morbius is it's kind of like a Frankenstein story, like Morbius and his monster. But yeah, the Doctor's having his brain like scanned, and we get flashing images on the screen of different past Doctor. We saw John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell, and then all these faces that we hadn't seen yet, and it is heavily implied that these are past incarnations of the Doctor, and it's like kind of never brought up again. And do you ever see these videos on YouTube where it's like Doctor Who continuity is on point?
Yes.
There's little precursors. People say like, oh, Chris Chibnall made up this whole thing for Doctor Who, and he's changed it. He's taken Doctor Who and he has changed it to what he wanted. But so much of Doctor Who has been a mystery that you kind of could have made almost any story you wanted for the Doctor's origins, and still found ways to piece it together through Classic Who and even through New Who. And I think that The Timeless Child does come to a very interesting conclusion of things that had been built up from in the past. So I don't have any qualms with them doing it in general. I think that it's a really interesting thing. And like you said, I agree. I think it was probably the most interesting thing Doctor Who had done in a long time. I just think that I wish that they had explored some, not that I need all of the information, I just wish that, for example, the Ruth Doctor, like I'd love a Fugitive Doctor miniseries. Like I'd love to I'd love to learn more about Division. And I mean, we'll talk about that with Flux, but there's a lot more I want to know, and I think there's a lot more we as the audience not deserve to know, that sounds entitled, but there's a lot more to know.
Right, we're going to have to rattle on because we've got more to get through, and it's a long episode, maybe our longest of all time. So on we go. We do. Well, I am going to take over the recap from now, if you don't mind. I take the reins. I don't think it's any hidden fact that this next part of Doctor Who is not overall our favourite, but we're about to go into the Flux. Alasdair, are you ready? Yay.
So the 13th series of Doctor Who had to be very strict back through no fault of its own. It was created during the pandemic, and I think it was meant to be a much bigger series than it ended up being, just due to the constraints of trying to shoot during a global pandemic. So what we ended up with is a 6-episode mini-series and then 3 specials that continue from those. The mini-series is all under the title Doctor Who Flux. So we have the Halloween apocalypse, where we're set on Halloween, and all across the universe terrifying forces are stirring from the Arctic Circle and deep space, and ancient evils breaking free. And in present-day Liverpool, the life of Dan Lewis is about to change forever. We meet Carvanista, who's a human dog, and learn about this big magical force called the Flux, which is going to eat up and destroy the entire universe. And he's there as a part of an alien species that has a designated human that they're all responsible for, and he is trying to get Dan off of Earth because it's not safe and it's going to be destroyed by the Flux. And we start getting all these little teasers for things that are going to happen throughout the series. We see a weeping angel, and we think, oh, what's going to happen with that? And we see these skulls, sort of crystally glitter monsters who apparently knew the Doctor, but the Doctor has no memory of this. And this very much leads on from the Timeless Child and the Doctor having their memories taken away, and they're not quite sure what they're missing. From this, we go back in time into the War of the Sontarans, which I think is a corker of an episode. It's during the Crimean Crimean War, the Doctor discovers that the British Army are fighting a brutal alien army of Sontarans, and Yaz and Dan are thrown deeper into a battle for survival. Really, really great historical episode, great Sontaran episode. Love the redesign for them. We then go into Once Upon a Time, where time is beginning to run wild, and on a planet that shouldn't exist, in the aftermath of the apocalypse, the Doctor, Dan, Yaz, and Vinda face a battle to survive. Vinda is a new character that's introduced in the Flux. Vinda is always looking for their partner, who was recently playing on Sex Education, was very, very good in that.
Yeah.
Where she's pregnant and they are traveling the universe trying to find each other. We then travel to the village of angels, because at the end of that episode, the angels have the TARDIS. Finally, after all these years, we get a payoff for it. A weeping angel is piloting the TARDIS, and it takes them to Devon in the 1960s.
Yeah.
A little girl's gone missing, and Professor Jericho is conducting psychic experiments. And in the village graveyard, there's one gravestone too many, which, spoiler alert, turns out to be a weeping angel. Annabelle Scully is the actress playing Claire Brown, and I just think she's fantastic. I've worked with her too, and she's amazing. We actually saw in the Halloween Apocalypse, she got sent back by a weeping angel, and we find out that she was sent to the 60s, so she's from the present day. She's a really, really great, I don't want to say almost companion, because it was clear they weren't really leading to that, but she would be a great companion, I think. I also think we get one of the best cliffhangers for Doctor Who ever at the end of this episode. I just think the Village of Angels is a fantastic episode. We get the cliffhanger that the angels have been hunting a rogue weeping angel, but they make a deal that instead of taking this rogue weeping angel who used to work for Division, they have found the Doctor, and the Doctor is a bigger enemy of Division, and they're going to take the Doctor hostage. And by doing that, they turn the Doctor into a weeping angel and separate her from her companions. And it's just it's a corker of a cliffhanger. That takes us to Survivors of the Flux, where the evil forces amass, and the Doctor, Yaz, and Dan face perilous journeys and seemingly insurmountable obstacles on their quest for survival. It's very fun because the entire episode, the Doctor and the companions are separated from each other, and you're having to see how they all survive. Jericho becomes a companion as well for the rest of the series. That then leads us into the finale, The Vanquishers, which finally sees the somewhat return, I'll say anyway, of Unit, where the forces of darkness are in control, but the monsters seem to have won, and no one else can be counted upon to save the universe, except for our good old friend, Miss Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, who comes to the rescue. She's fighting a good fight for Unit, and it's very hard to recap. Bada bing, bada boom, they win, basically.
Bada bing, bada boom, they win. I don't remember how either. And then we have the specials after this, which were pretty spaced apart. One of my absolute favourites, Eve of the Daleks. This is, I think, one of the best ever Dalek stories. So much fun. All takes place in a giant kind of one of those storage store thing, lockers, things, you know what I mean?
Like a safe store.
A safe store. And they turn up when the Doctor is giving the TARDIS a reboot, and they get trapped in a time loop that's been created by the Daleks to kill them. They keep living the same kind of 15 minutes over and over and over again to defeat the Daleks, which is really, really good fun. Love that episode. Then we go into Legend of the Sea Devils, which I think is arguably one of the weakest episodes of Doctor Who ever. They come face to fin with one of the oldest adversaries, the Sea Devils. They meet legendary pirate queen Madame Ching, who is searching for lost treasure. I think the Sea Devils are trying to change the climate to flood the earth so that they can live on the land or something along those lines. In the end, the Doctor allows someone else to stay down in the ship underwater forever, so that doesn't happen, and she's fine with that, which is another controversial point. And then into the final episode we saw, which is The Power of the Doctor, which was this mega collection of the Master, the Cybermen, the Daleks, all come together in the Master's plot to replace the Doctor by stealing the Doctor's body and then tarnishing the Doctor's reputation. The end.
Yeah, no, it was a big accumulation. It saw the return of Ace and Tegan. It had Daleks, had Cybermen, it had the Master. I also accidentally sort of glossed over in the Flux that we finally see Tecteun, the person who experimented on the Doctor.
Oh, yes, we do.
And there's a whole point. Basically, Flux. Okay, recaps are done. We're moving into good discussion chat. The ending of Flux, it's just there's so many things and so many subplots. I think I'm going to dive in with my issue with the Flux is there's too many things happening. And I think that genuinely, 2 of the episodes from Flux are 2 of the best episodes from the 13th Doctor's era. I think the Sontaran and the Weeping Angel episodes are 2 of 13's best episodes, and they are really good, Doctor. I remember you around watching the Sontaran episode with me here, and we just were like, oh my god, this is really good Doctor Who. Like, this is a very, very good episode. But then what they would do is they would have a really good episode, and then they'd chuck in a scene to reference something else that's happening. Flux has nothing to do with this episode, and we as the audience don't care about this subplot. And it would really take you away from the adventure. And Flux accumulates with... all of this series is leading towards, the Timeless Child story, and it's interwoven throughout the specials as well. We meet Tecteun, who is the person who took the Doctor away and experimented on them, and they basically say that the Flux is this big entity destroying the universe, and they're going to let it happen because they're going to now go through a portal to a different universe, and they want to take the Doctor with them. And they also have an Ood for some reason. There's an Ood there. I think this was a bit what I was talking about, where they say, like, I remember this character, you like the Ood, right? We're going to chuck an Ood in there. Like, it felt a little bit like that.
Oh, it's a lovely Ood.
It is a lovely Ood. It's a very lovely Ood. And okay, call me controversial. I'm going to say a very honest fact about how I feel. I felt like Flux and other things that happened leading up to that, not just in Chibnall's era, in Moffat's era and leading up to that, I felt like at this point Doctor Who had gotten a bit messy. And Tecteun was saying to the Doctor, we're going to go to basically a parallel universe, another universe, and you can come too. And there was a point where I genuinely wanted the Doctor to go, and I wanted whatever the next series would be to be quite a hard reboot for the show. And I don't know that I necessarily stand with this opinion now, but I felt it at the time, and I'll be honest about how I feel. I wanted to see different Daleks. I wanted the Doctor and their TARDIS to come from our universe to go into a new universe, to see, we could have maybe companions who had previously been on the show, who might be older now, come back having never met the Doctor and have a whole new run as a companion, like as a fresh companion, different versions of the Cybermen, new monsters, new things. And I just thought that was really exciting, and I was a little disappointed they didn't go that way. Not necessarily disappointed now, because I'm really excited to see how the show's going, but do you see what I mean? That I felt like Doctor Who could have maybe benefited from that?
I do. I was very concerned, as you say, there was a point where the Doctor is with Tecteun and Division crossing across from one universe to another, and she actually says, this other universe we're going to is where you came from, basically, or we think you came from, because this is your child self was at the edge of the wormhole that leads to this universe. So there was this whole tease there of your family could be on this side, your people could be on this side, don't you want to kind of know? And I was worried that they would reset the whole universe by moving across there and being like, well, there's nothing you can do. Like, the Flux is going to destroy the whole universe that you've just left behind. You're going to have to start getting this new one. And I thought that was going to be the answer. And I was really worried about that because, I like continuity. And if I thought that the whole continuity was wiped, that nothing that's happened in series, season 1 in 1963 to now is wiped clean, I would have been pretty upset by that and would not have liked to start again in a new universe. I can see the merit of saying, this is a brand new universe, we don't know anything about it, and the Doctor is traveling, across it with, fresh eyes. We don't know anything about what we might find. That's really, really scary. I don't like that. But I think for the Flux, I agree. It's, for me, far too packed. It's trying to do too much. It's too ambitious, and there's way too many threads overlapping each other. I found it very hard to understand the Flux as a thing as well. It was meant to be this kind of like
it's a big cloud,
it's like a cloud of apocalypse that just destroys everything in its path. But equally, the Carvanistas ships could stop it, but not the actual mantle of a planet couldn't. I didn't get how that worked. The bigger issues that we saw the Flux destroy so much, destroyed planets, galaxies. I think it destroyed some stuff in our solar system, I'm pretty sure. I feel like we lost a few planets. And there was no resolution for how any of that.
They didn't undo it.
They didn't undo it. There was a point at which I mean, this is from memory, I'm pretty sure, and someone will correct us, please feel free.
Go for it.
They were oh my god, 90% of the universe is gone already. The universe is smaller than it was at the start of this episode. And it wasn't fixed. I don't know how we reconcile that. So that bothered me. I think I would have preferred that the whole idea of flux, because we've heard of flux in Doctor Who before, and if time is in flux, it means things can change. And I would prefer that this was a bit of a wacky what if series of Doctor Who, where you can bring back, maybe bring back old actors as new characters. Maybe you bring back, the Master doesn't look anything like they did earlier, and da-da-da-da, and what if this had happened, not this, and maybe Daleks are good now, and you could have played with that instead. I think would have been a more interesting season. But I found, it was far too confusing. I like the episodes that are strong, like Village of the Angels. They almost would have been stronger without the flux.
Completely.
If you could remove the flux and just make
agree.
it a standalone episode, I'd be so much more interested in that.
Like I said, that episode had an amazing cliffhanger, but it should have been a 2-part Weeping Angel story, and what it became was the first 60 seconds of the next story was the Doctor being like, oh, that was weird being an angel, now I'm in Division and we're dealing with the flux. And it's like, I feel like episodes like Legend of the Sea Devil and The Village of Angels and the Warren Sontaran episode, like, they were all very good episodes that would have fit into a regular series of Doctor Who, and the fact they decided, because it was a shorter series, to make it more of like a big spectacle event, I just don't think they needed to do that. And I think a lot of what they chose to do with Flux led people to be incredibly strong opinions in a negative way about the 13th Doctor Zero as a whole. And I don't think that this era is well reflected by Flux, and I don't think it should be, because I think there is a lot more to it than that. I think Flux and the Timeless Child unfairly weigh down the 13th Doctor's era, personally.
That's a fair take. I think. I mean, a lot of people do like the Flux. A lot of people think those are really fun.
I don't mind being mean about it. I'm sorry.
Listen, girl, speak your truth, be brave.
Yeah.
Take up space. Say what you need to say.
Say what you
I think
wanna
for me as well then, so that. Leading into The Power of the Doctor, I was a bit nervous actually about what the quality of that episode would be like from the Flux episodes, because though, again, executed well in terms of great production value, looked gorgeous, everything else, bit nervous about kind of like narratively, might they pack the Power of the Doctor too dense again? They did a little bit, I think. I think, again, they overstuffed the Power of the Doctor. A lot was happening, and it was Russia 1916, Earth 2022. How does this make sense? And it was a little bit of that again. Daleks, Cybermen, Unit, it's all going on. And it's trying to create the sense of like, whoa, this crazy adventure. But it actually kind of weakens all of it, because it's you can't get invested in any one thing before you're distracted again. So, yeah, tricky one. I mean, in the end, Power of the Doctor is an episode I really enjoyed. When you step back and reflect on it a little more, there are holes in it, but all of Doctor Who has that, so I won't get too stuck on that. But the Flux was a difficult one. A difficult
one, yeah. I loved in the Power of the Doctor getting to see Tegan and Ace back. We have a whole episode devoted to that in the podcast. It's episode 2 of Wholala. You should go back and have a listen. But yeah, there's definitely things I like. Like I said, I love those 2 episodes, and I really like the Power of the Doctor on the whole. I think my issue, this issue has come up a lot in the 13th Doctor's era, but it's specifically, I think, with Flux and these specials, is that I don't necessarily think there was the attention to details needed, like, in my opinion, to certain things where it's like the whole idea wasn't fully formed, but they'd committed to it, and you're left with more questions than answers, but not in the way that you're like, oh my god, what an interesting story, I wonder this, that, and the other. It's like, oh no, you never told us this, or 90% of the universe got destroyed, and what's happened with, like, a lot of people died, and the Doctor doesn't really seem to care, and like, I don't know. I know that we're gonna have to end this episode in a minute because it is getting long, but let's briefly touch on the relationship between the Doctor and Yaz, because it's the first time in quite a while that we've had a direct love story between the Doctor and a companion.
Yeah, we've talked about it a bit more. I think in the Queer Universe episodes, we talked about it a bit more. In a very Queer Universe, we talked about it more. And I talked about it a bit in the episode with my sister as well, because she has quite strong feelings on this. It's a real shame that this didn't get expanded a bit more. The groundwork started to be laid in Series 12 for this relationship, which was cool. We have these conversations where Yaz is fairly clear about her feelings. It's a shame that it only really got pushed quite late, and that the explanation kind of given felt a bit tepid. It was a bit like, oh, I can't attach myself to anyone romantically, but if I could, it might be you, but I can't, so let's not even try that. And then Yaz is like, yeah, I have before, and I've had a wife, and I've had other partners, and actually that was sometimes fine, but not this time. And the power of the Doctor specifically, my poor boyfriend was made to watch that the other day, and he was like, I wouldn't know that there was meant to be a romantic relationship there. Like, they're just friends in that episode, and it's like, they are just friends in that episode. They are friends in that episode.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I meant to kind of conclude that, like, the Legend of the Sea Devils right before it was meant to be the Doctor explicitly saying not gonna happen and Yaz accepting it, and then they move on. But it's odd to me if that was the end of that relationship, which, you know, kind of was. Yeah. And then the power of the Doctor kind of inexplicably saying, I need to regenerate on my own, and I don't want you there after I'm done either. I just don't want you in my life anymore.
Yeah.
And then Yaz being like, let's not say goodbye, which comes from Yaz's side, not the Doctor's side. I mean, I'm glad the door is open to Yaz returning. I'm glad the 13th Doctor is the only Doctor who got all the companions home alive, so they can all come back. Yeah. And I really like a lot of them. I really like Dan. He makes me laugh because the evil Dan memes make me laugh. I like Graham. Graham's good. I like Yaz a lot, and Yaz, I wish had had more time just on her own to shine. And I like she was really coming to her own, and I wish she'd come to her own a bit earlier when she's flying her own TARDIS.
I know.
She's clearly learnt things behind the scenes.
She could have been like, I think, a Clara, but I think when you have such a heavy TARDIS team, it's hard to give any one of them a real spotlight, and I think that Flux really gave her a spotlight, because Dan is much more of a side companion to Yaz, and I agree with you. I think she really, truly comes into her own as companion. It's almost like she needed a full series as a solo companion, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I really, really like what they did. I did notice that Ryan was very, very missing when you were giving your list of companions that you like.
Ryan, I didn't offer a huge amount for me. I just didn't get a lot from it. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's me.
Well, that was a whistle-stop tour. And I think the longest episode of Wholala ever.
Not sure that qualifies for whistle stop.
It was both a whistle stop tour and also the longest episode of Wholala so far. Looking at the 13th Doctor's era. Thank you so much, dear listener, for joining us. Because as always, with our What You Missed on Who, we are going to be looking at an episode of the 13th Doctor's era. And we've already decided. I don't want to tell you which episode. Well, should we tell them? Should we tell them which episode we're doing?
Oh, yeah, we should. And we've got a special guest as well
for
this
one. We do.
One.
We're going to have a very special guest, which I will keep secret until the episode comes out. But we're going to be looking back at the Village of Angels.
We're going back to the Flux, my favourite.
We're going back to the Flux. Like I said, I actually do. This is one of my favourite episodes of the 13th Doctor's era. So even though it is within what is a bit of a messy Flux, I'm very, very excited to look back at this. And I'm very excited to announce who our special guest will be.
Yeah, I can't wait. It will be really great. It's going to be fun. It's a fab episode, and I haven't seen it for a while. So I'm interested to go back.
I actually rewatched it for fun maybe like a month ago. So I'll watch it again for Wholala. But
you're cheating.
I love it. Well, thank you again so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Wholala, please let us know. Reach out to us on any of our social media. We're on Twitter/X, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. Please chuck us a DM, send us a tweet. We love it when you send us TikToks and you just message us, let us know things that you've seen that you think we'd find funny. We absolutely adore it. So please reach out to us on any of those platforms and let us know, what did you think of the 13th Doctor's era?
Absolutely. And if you have a moment as well, we'd really appreciate if you could follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. If that's an option for you, I think you can. And if you could rate our podcast as well, that really, really helps us find new listeners who also love Doctor Who as much as you do. And share it with a friend.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying it, stick it on your story, recommend it, give us a 5-star on there. Tell everyone how good we are.
Exactly. It really does actually, like, it makes my heart like glow when I see people tweet out and they're like, oh my god, I've just like found this podcast, it's Wholala, and I really enjoy it, and you should listen to it too. It's silly. We have been on the teetering edge of 1,000 followers on our Instagram for about a week now. We keep getting to like 999 and then going down by like 2 and then back up and then down. Please follow us on our Instagram. We would love to get over the 1,000 threshold. That was just a cheeky ply from me. But thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
We'll see you very soon. Have a lovely week.
Don't blink.